All right. I mean, I don't even need this. I talk so loud. I'm gonna have to like whisper into this to make it work for you all. So please excuse me if I can start talking like this. What a blessing to be here. How's everyone doing tonight in the room? Yeah, come on, we're at South by Southwest. How are we doing today? Oh my gosh, what an absolute honor to be up here on stage presenting my passion to each and every one of you in Austin, Texas, at a weekend that's just filled with thought leadership and innovation and progressiveness and curiosity and exploration, you know, and that's what we're really here doing with Cannabis and Food. It's all about curiosity and exploration. And I hope that you learn from what I'm going to guide you through today that we're going to kind of take this beyond the culinary and really in how you can optimize your life with cannabis, but doing that through food. So who's ready for that? All right, I like this crowd. I was like, there's going to be 2 people here. So we're winning. So we're here talking about the art of cannabis and food pairings. But really, this is learning how to optimize your consumption. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. And so, do you guys mind if I move around on stage, walk around, walk back there? We're good with that? Thumbs up? Okay, thank you, appreciate you. So, great. So, the pot sommelier, weed next to wine at the dinner table. This was an article that Bloomberg did on me in 2016. And it was just a huge hit for me at the time. And I was so grateful for it. And I kind of, up to this point, described myself as a host. And I'll get into my background shortly, but that's what I described. And then I spoke at a conference in New York City, and I got interviewed by Bloomberg right afterwards, and then this article dropped on the front page the next morning. And it really I started using the moniker of Cannabis Sommelier at that particular moment in time. And as I've gone on, I've actually really moved off of that term. You know, as we've grown into this industry with this plant, using the term cannabis sommelier at the time was really helping us destigmatize the plant. It was giving validation to wine culture and food culture. But as I've gone deeper and deeper into my work, what we do is way beyond being a cannabis sommelier. Sure, what I do with my work is exploration of exquisite taste. It is terroir and where everything's coming from and educating people on the land. It is being a master of hospitality, right? Those are all similarities that I carry with a traditional wine sommelier. But with my work, as I consider myself a kashom now, is way beyond that, because what we're doing with cannabis and what I do through educating people through food is we're actually teaching people how to optimize their life with cannabis. You know, how can you use cannabis to enhance all aspects of life? And sometimes that's not using cannabis at all. But at the same time, you know, when we're high, our awareness grows outside of our normal thoughts. And so if we apply that to things that we love in life, then all of a sudden you're getting a new lens into some of these passions that you may have. And because of that, because of what we can do for people's lifestyle wellness, that is why I consider what we do is beyond being a cannabis sommelier and being a kashom. And so through this, I educate people on the platform of food. And so this is what we're going to get into today around the art of cannabis and food pairings. So who's ready for that now? All right, good. We got this crowd still going. So I've been in the cannabis industry for 14 years. I come from the legacy market before then, and I got into the cannabis industry in 2009 when the medical boom hit Colorado. So I opened up one of the first dispensaries in Colorado Springs at the time, and became a really good cultivator for a number of years. And if you ever ask a grower if they're the best, they're always going to tell you that they're the best. So I was the best cultivator ever, I must say. Okay, we got a couple laughs, that's good. And so within that, I started just really, my knowledge comes from working with the plant, and something I absolutely love is working with this plant. You should all, if you live in a legal state, definitely grow at your home in your backyard. It's a lot of fun connecting with the plant that way. But I've done in 2013, as we were gearing up for legalization, I met this Wall Street banker at the time, and he moved to Colorado to start a holding company. And he wanted to be the first cannabis billionaire at the time. And this is important because recreational shops opened up on January 1st of 2014 in Colorado after it was voted on in 2012. So I met this guy, and all of a sudden my whole world opened up to the ancillary side of the industry that was coming ahead. And as a cultivator before then, I had no idea or had no vision of this. But once I started working with him in kind of a startup entrepreneurial style way, I started really seeing that there was going to be so much opportunity. And the question that really spurred my curiosity, or my mission, if you will, was how do we tap into the soccer mom at the time? And that was something that was like a really big question for us, because you got to remember, cannabis was very stigmatized back in 2013. You know, here we are in 2023 where everyone's like, cannabis, yeah, you can have that conversation all the time. But back then, it just wasn't like that. So I started Cultivating Spirits after I went on a wine tour in Barcelona at the end of 2013. And I was sitting at this dinner, and I was like, it doesn't matter if you consume wine or not, you want to be sitting at this dinner right now. And so, you know, because I'm such a brilliant person, it was like, oh, let's do cannabis and food wine style events, right? And it really struck a chord with me of like, that's how we can really drive an inviting experience for all walks on earth. And that's what really got me started in the cannabis and food space at the time, which I'll get into a little bit more. But through Cultivating Spirits, we are the first company in the United States to offer legal cannabis dinners to the general public. We opened up in February 1st of 2014. We did the first ever cannabis consumption event that was ever approved by a municipality, which was Aspen in 2015, opening night of X Games. I work with the Fairmont Hotel Group. Everyone know the Fairmont? So they're the first billion-dollar hospitality company to do and produce their own consumption events. So they're their events. I just consult on them, and I get to host them for them. So there's many firsts that we've done in this space outside of what I've just told you, but these are some of the accolades that have brought me up to be on this stage right here and right now. So I started the Cannabis Wedding Expo in 2016, and which was just a small expose for industry, wedding service companies and cannabis service companies. We've been in 7 different markets. We've done over 25 shows. I figured if cannabis could be accepted at a wedding, it could be accepted anywhere, and that's what really drove me to put that together. I'm a member of the Rolling Stone Culture Council. This is my 3rd year being a member of them, so I get to write for Rolling Stone Culture Council. I published a great article on Monday that talks about exactly what we're doing up here, what you can learn about cannabis through food. So if you Google Rolling Stone and, you know, what you can learn about cannabis through food, you'll find it. And my latest venture right now is Kashom. And what Kashom is a body of work that I've created that originally was going to be the Cannabis Sommelier course, which I started 4 years ago. But as I just explained as we opened up this talk, we're moving that way beyond it. And you'll understand that a little bit more as we work through the presentation today. I'm very grateful to be mentioned in a lot of different media outlets. And so pretty much every major media outlet I've been featured in for lots of different reasons, mostly good though, I think. This was in Time Magazine in 2015 when we were going to open up the first cannabis resort at the time, and created a whole wellness program with cannabis. And that's important to know, as will come about later, again, because the skills that I have, you can apply way beyond just cannabis and food. But that's just my favorite platform to provide this in, because who here doesn't like food? Okay, see, now you see why I love it so much. All right, so in our talk today, we're going to get into what is a cannabis pairing, the difference between pairings and infusions, terpenes, the importance of education through food, smoke, eat, drink, different layers, timing, tastings, concluding, kashom, and then we'll try to leave some time for some Q&A. I was hoping, is there a clock anywhere that's like I can see? Okay, cool. Just so I'm not like looking at my phone as I'm talking to you guys. This photo actually right here is from that Aspen event in 2015 that we did in downtown Aspen that was approved by a municipality. So you'll see some shots from that event, but it was an unbelievable evening. Okay, what is a cannabis pairing? Nobody? Okay. You're on it. That's the starting point for sure. Thank you, thank you. So what a cannabis pairing is we are pairing terpene profiles of cannabis with flavor profiles of food for harmonization and enhancement. So that's what we're going for. We're actually going for an enhancement of flavors. Now, opposed to like where a wine will cut the flavor in your mouth, change the mouthfeel, what we're doing with cannabis pairings is really trying to enhance that. And so that's everything that we're doing. Now, all of this is done through smoking. This is not done through infusions. We do all of this through smoking, which creates for a better environment, and which I'll tell you all about in a minute. But who here has heard of terpenes before? Oh, well, yeah, look at that. That's like, usually at my dinners, there's like one out of every 10 people know it, and we had almost half the people here that knew what terpenes are. So we're gonna dive into terpenes more here in a second. So again, a cannabis pairing is we are pairing terpene profiles of cannabis with flavor profiles of food to harmonize and enhance, all done through smoking. Now, infusions are different, right? So whenever you smoke cannabis, it goes through your blood-brain barrier, and that's what gets you high, is that. Whenever you ingest cannabis through infusions or edibles, that's processing through your liver. So it actually gets into 11-hydroxy-THC is what that goes into. And so the feeling that you get is completely different. Who here smokes cannabis all the time but eats an edible and is like, whoa? Okay, there's a couple. They're not so proud of that. They just kind of like hold their hands up like this high. They're not like, much respect to you all. So within that, that's why, because when it processes through your liver, it gives you a way different type of high than it is whenever you're smoking. And there's so many people who don't realize that. And so people who smoke a joint every day and then they eat 5 milligrams of an edible, they're just, boom, blasted off. And they're like, well, I smoke weed all the time. Well, it's because it's a completely different feeling. It's like a completely different drug, if you will, because it does process through the liver. So, in my opinions, when you're doing dinner parties, cannabis pairings are so much better than doing infusions for a number of reasons. A, you feel the effects immediate of smoke. You'll feel it within 2 to 3 minutes, where infusions can take an hour or two to check in. And it's also, every person will be different depending on people's metabolism and when they ate last and all sorts. So, like, this guy over here might be feeling it in 45 minutes, and then this lady over here might be feeling it in like 2 hours, So all of a sudden, there's a completely different vibe that's going on at the dinner table, right? So another thing is, people feel very unsafe around edibles. They're like, what am I eating? You can't see it, you can't smell it, you have no idea how much is in it outside of what somebody tells you, right? What a chef tells you. Now, if you have a hard liquor, you can like smell it and be like, oh wow, this is like, I don't know, this is like, seems higher than 70 proof or something like that. You still can use your senses to kind of identify the strength of something. But with edibles, you have no idea. So when people come sit down at the dinner, they're a little afraid. They're like, oh my God, I'm nervous, what am I getting into? And there's not a lot of trust there, so people can't just relax, right? Another thing is, to me, the ambiance of smoke at a dinner table is really cool. And this isn't like cigarette smoke. You know, this isn't like bothersome to most people. Sure, it might bother some people, but for the majority of people, it doesn't bother. And it adds a vibe to it. But also, too, we're coming together to break bread, right? Since biblical times, we break bread to be able to bring the physical together, right? Well, with a lot of indigenous wisdom cultures, they will share smoke to unite the spirit, right? So here we are coming to dine together, breaking bread, and we're also sharing smoke to be able to unite the spirits as well. So to me, there's more significance that is aligned with cannabis pairings than actually infusions. Okay, terpenes. Let me see all my terpene lovers out there again. How many we got? Okay, all right. Just double checking time here. So, terpenes are organic compounds that exist within cannabis, but they exist within all flowers, all fruits, all vegetables. Everything has terpenes in it in the botanical world. And so within that, they use it to attract pollinators and detract predators, right? So it's what bees are smelling, or terpenes, right? Plants will actually, when they're babies, they actually have a different terpene profile than when they're adults, because when they're babies, they don't want, something to come eat them, right? But when it's an adult, it's going to make itself more attractive because it knows it's going to die soon and it wants to spread its seed. So this is how the plants use terpenes. They also use them for physical, to help fight disease and other things. Which, when used in cannabis, it can help to fight disease and certain ailments, but I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to get into that side of terpenes. Everything I'm going to do is really focus around lifestyle, okay? So within terpenes, within cannabis, there's 3 different types of feelings that allow you to feel the way that you feel. You have your flavonoids, which is a little bit lesser known compound of cannabis that produces the color of it. There is your cannabinoids, which is your CBD. Everyone knows what CBD is, right? That was the first. No one knows what it is. That's great. Sorry, I gotta interact with people. That's just how I speak. Cannabinoids. THC is actually a cannabinoid. So THC is what gives you a high euphoric effect, right? So THC gives you this high euphoric effect, but THC doesn't steer the ship per se. It just gives you that sense of high. And we're going to kind of break down the feelings of cannabis later, but that's what it is. It gives you that sense of high. Now, terpenes are, when consumed in cannabis, is actually what steers the ship. It's actually what gives you the feeling that you're going to feel, is terpenes. So with that understanding, you can actually smell and understand a terpene profile, and then through that, you can actually identify how that is going to make you feel before you even consume, and just really tapping into your own senses. And that's what it's all about for me, is using your own senses around this. So I think terpenes are the most important compound that exists within cannabis, personally. Although we might not smoke cannabis if it wasn't for THC. But at the same time, this is what I look for when I'm picking out strains, is terpene profiles, more so than actually THC percentages. Okay, so everyone have a good sense of terpenes? We're with me? All right. So there's 212 terpenes that exist within cannabis. And these are major terpenes and minor terpenes. There's a lot of subcategories of terpenes as well, which I'm not going to get into today. But if you really want to nerd out on this stuff, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes here. So within that, I really like to identify a main 14, and I would even say that's 14 to 16 terpenes that are really found in most strains and are most dominant. So if you think about, you have flower, right? And you test that. And typically you're going to have, let's say, a lot of strains now will have between 18 and 25% THC, right? That's the amount of THC that it has. Well, within terpenes, there might be anywhere from 1.5 to 4% terpenes in a typical flower that you have, and that that 2.5% of terpenes will be layered with multiple terpenes. So there's multiple types of terpenes that exist within each strain, not just one. And that's what makes it so beautiful to work with in the food setting, because we are working with layers of flavor, and all the different strains or cultivars have these different layers of flavors that you can play with whenever you're doing cannabis pairings. And it can be all over the place from a dominant, say you have 2.5%, there might be one terpene that's 2%, and then there might be another one that's like 0.2, and then another one 0.1, and tapers off from there. Or some of them will have 2.5% of terpene, but it's 1% of this, 1% of that, 0.5% of that, and then just really low levels of other terpenes. So you can understand how many different types of flavor profiles that you can interchange within this. And because 70% of taste comes from smell. So that's why we're really playing with the aromas here. So we have our main 14, but this is the dominant 5. This is, you could study these for a while and really learn how to benefit your life from using these. So the first one is myrcene. Myrcene is the most common terpene that's found in cannabis. It is what smells like earth. It smells like dirt. It smells like cacao. It smells and it's very sedative, right? And myrcene is the most dominant terpene that there is. They find myrcene in more cannabis than everything else. Then you have limonene. So limonene is the citrus smells that you have within cannabis. Whenever you get oranges, whenever you get lemon, you're smelling limonene. That's very stimulating to the mind. It's if you ever get anxiety from cannabis, you want to stay away from something that might have limonene in it that smells like citrus, because it just makes your head so racy. But for some people, that's exactly where they want to go, and that energizes really good for them. So that's limonene. And then linalool. Linalool is what we have right here in this photo. It's lavender. So linalool is found in lavender. It's a very softening terpene. It's relaxing, and it's who here ever uses essential oils? Great. So what makes up essential oils? Yes, terpenes. So as you use a lavender essential oil, that's how you look at linalool, right? Like, you wouldn't wake up necessarily and start using lavender essential oil unless maybe you weren't feeling well, right? And you needed to. So whenever I started doing all of my work, there was no information about terpenes back in 2013, 2014. So I actually studied doTERRA, a multi-level marketing essential oil company. And that's where I really started learning about terpenes so much, and making a lot of the theories that you're hearing today is from those times. Okay, you have alpha and beta pinene. That's when you smell a pine tree, you're smelling alpha and beta pinene. So it smells exactly like pine, and that helps with focus and memory retention. So it's really good if you need to work, potentially, right? You take something that has limonene and alpha beta pinene, it smells like pine sol, right? That lemon fresh pine sol, everyone knows that smell. Well, if you smell that in cannabis, then you're gonna know that there's this really energizing part of it, and then there's this focus part of it. So you could actually, I used to love this terpene profile for work. I don't smoke in the day as much as I used to, but it would be like halfway through the day, and if I was having a rough time, I would take one little hit of that. Everything that was bothering me earlier in the day was gone, and I would feel like I had a shot of espresso, and I could just get into a zone, in a work zone, and it treated my body really good. But it also might not treat your body really well at the same time, which we're going to get into, because we're all different, and thank God we're all different. The last one real quick is caryophyllene that we'll hop into is the dominant 5, and that is like your pepper, that's like your cedar, your cayenne, that's like those type of spicy smells to it is caryophyllene, and it's very relaxing as well. So that's how that's going to treat you. All right. So this is why I love my work so much, because we go into the platform of cannabis and food pairings, but my whole goal is teaching people that you can actually identify what type of high you're going to have before you even consume by understanding the organoleptic properties of cannabis. Our organoleptic is a term that means how our senses relate to the plant. So we're focusing more on aromas. We can get really nerdy, and you can tell how well cannabis was cured by like sound and like a crunch and things. So we're not gonna dive into that here today. But you can really use all 5 senses to help kind of allow you to understand where something's going to take you. So identifying your high before you consume, that is my goal every time I do a dinner, is to teach people that there's an overarching understanding. My overarching goal is to get people to understand that you can use cannabis in this sort of way by learning about it and learning about yourself. And we, again, do this on the platform of food and cannabis. So who here would like to know how they would feel before they consume something and where it's going to take them, right? It's a great tool to have. And unfortunately, it's not talked about enough in the cannabis space. So, but this relates to the importance of educating through food, is this identification process. But just like a wine, you have to train your senses to be able to pick up this information. You know, if you're going to go, I bet everyone here has done a wine tasting one time in their life, right? You need to be able to train your palate over time to really understand how that is going to really understand the different textures of the wine, to understand the different flavors of the wine, to understand, even if you're really good, the type of soil that comes from, right? It takes a lot of time to do that. And what I'm teaching you all today is the same sort of process. You have to train yourself over time to understand it. Okay. Smoke, eat, drink. We're going to kind of get into kind of like the rules of a cannabis pairing, if you will. So, who here, all right, I'll stop asking you guys questions. So, indica and sativa. Indica and sativa is historically how we have described cannabis and the types of feeling that it's going to make you feel. Indica and sativa actually have no bearing really anymore, because there's no land-raised strains out there, or they're very limited. What a land-raised strain is a strain that is grown from a particular region that is its natural environment. And we have taken cannabis and hybridized it in so many different ways because, so we could grow it in Northern California. You know, a lot of strains that were originally land-raised don't have the ability to grow in that type of environment. But once the Netherlands started crossbreeding a lot of different types of cultivars, then all of a sudden they allowed it so you could actually harvest it in these certain types of environments. And then and so I don't like to use the term sativa and indica, but they do have a little bit of meaning if I want to get a quick message across to somebody, right? Because you're going to just say indica in the couch or indica asleep, and you're going to think of sativa as being awake. So if I ever do use the terms, I'll say historical or traditional, a historical indica or traditional sativa, or what it may be. So if you want the most basic rule of cannabis pairings, if you will, is that red wine goes with red meat, right? In a very basic sense. And white wine goes with like fish dishes and white meats typically, right? And so if you would use a traditional indica, you would use that with red meats, right? A traditional indica would probably have myrcene in it. Remember we just talked about myrcene? And so that is the very earthy flavors to that, very grounding flavors to it. Caryophyllene, which is relaxing, very spicy flavors to that, which naturally goes with red meat. And traditional sativas will be will have a lot more of the limonene in it, the citrus flavors in it. And so that naturally, like, citrus goes better with fish. And so it kind of like, those are some simple rules within cannabis pairings that you can understand. But it's also really fun because there's so many harmonizations between the earth, our bodies, and cannabis that you find out if you nerd out on this stuff as long as I do. And it just really makes me excited to, whenever I have these like little new epiphanies come across. But if you think about it, if you smoke a traditional indica, it's going to make you feel sedative. If you eat a big steak, that might make you feel sedative, right? If you usually will eat a fish dish to eat something lighter so you can be more energized. Well, if you have a sativa, a traditional sativa, it's going to make you feel more energized. So these are just a few rules that you can think about with cannabis pairings that are kind of fun to play around with. And another thing with it, it's kind of a smoke, eat, drink type of flow, right? You smoke to enhance your senses, and then to be able to, you smoke to enhance your senses, and then you eat because we're going for that harmonization. And if you are using wine within that, then what you want to do with wine is typically cut that flavor in your mouth, right? So honestly, you can do this however you want because this is the culinary arts. Art should not have any limitations to it. But if you want a general guideline, you can look at it as like an smoke, eat, drink type of flow. All right. And then another really important thing is whenever you're doing cannabis is timing. So whenever you're doing dinners, timing is very important because when you're high, you can get really uncomfortable if you're sitting at a table for a long, long time. And this is the thing. Some people might not get that way, but some people might get very uncomfortable. So the timing of flow, the timing to keep things moving is very important. And one of the things that's my job to do as a kashom is to understand that people are high within the experience that they're having. And while I'm educating them, and which that education is very important, there's also I'm also keeping people's minds and keeping their thoughts contained in the room instead of like going way out and imagining something that maybe that's not so present in the room that we are, producing the event for them at. So timing is very, very important when it comes to cannabis pairing dinners. All right, properly tasting cannabis. So first of all, again, if you've smoked your whole life a certain way and want to keep doing that, please keep doing that. But there is a way that you can actually properly taste cannabis that's really fun. So what you can do is you can actually, first you want to take the cannabis, you want to feel it, you want to connect with it, look at it visually, see what's appealing to you, see what's not appealing to you. As I was saying, as you can connect with the organoleptic properties to identify how you're going to feel before you actually consume, therefore you can consume something that's going to enhance your experience opposed to take away from it. This is the process that you start to do that. And then you want to, if you're smoking out of a bowl like this, then what you want to do is break up the cannabis as finely as possible. Because what that's going to do is allow the flame to burn more evenly throughout the bowl, opposed to like burning one chunk or one side of the cannabis, right? So it allows for a more even burn. And then what you want to do is you want to focus on the taste on the inhalation, because the taste on the inhalation will be different than the taste on the exhalation. Whenever you inhale, you can see how it feels on your throat, because you can actually tell how well something was cured by understanding how it feels on your throat. or how well it was flushed. And these are processes that happen after you harvest cannabis to make it the best, the best product possible is through those processes. And then what you want to do is you want to fully expand your lungs to allow all the smoke to enter into your bloodstream. So the bigger you expand your lungs, the more surface area and the more pores open up for the smoke to get into your bloodstream. So if you don't want a big hit, so many people worry about how much smoke's in the pipe, but all you have to do is just worry about how much you're expanding your lungs. So you can just, everyone do full capacity, right? And then now do a half capacity. And that's what's going to be different in regards to the size of the hit that you're going to have. And then as you just want to hold it in for a second or two. You don't need to like cut off the bloodstream to your head. You can just, hold it for a second and then slowly exhale. And then you can notice the taste afterwards, because the taste on the inhalation is going to be different than the taste on the exhalation. And then you can smack your tongue to the roof of your mouth. And what that does is the overall flavor actually sticks into the saliva. And so with that, you'll be able to get the overall taste of cannabis at that point. And then you can pay attention to the aftertaste, because the aftertaste is going to be different than the inhalation and the exhalation. But the important thing is to the conclusion of it. How do you actually feel? And checking in with yourself 1 or 2 minutes after that hit and ask myself, how do I feel right now? Like, where is this taking me? And these are all things that you should track as you become, let's say, a connoisseur of cannabis, or you just want to be able to use cannabis in a way that we spoke about earlier of identifying what type of high you're going to have before you actually consume. And then you get super nerdy. Like, you'll actually feel it, like your mouth tingling in different parts of your mouth, the different strains. There's different aftertaste that can linger for a while, but it's kind of fun. Even when you smell cannabis, you'll smell it in different parts of your nose. So things that you can play around with if you choose to. All right, so feelings. So how does cannabis make you feel? Great. How does cannabis make someone else feel? Sleepy. Not good. Hungry. Great. Has anyone ever heard someone articulate what it's like being high that was like, oh, that's it. That's the definition. Do we have? Yep. Uh-huh. 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 Great. But like also like there's differences. Like I was born in California and I had hydroponics business there. We can talk about that later. Sure. Yeah, like people definitely have different experience, like euphoria or like this really like meditative. Yeah. So I'll get into kind of the different experiences that people may have in just a second, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because it's very important to understand that we all have different experiences. And that's honestly why no one's been able to describe what it's like being high in a true definition, because it is different for all of us. So what I like to do is I kind of break it down in these layers. So euphoria. So the overall understanding of being high is euphoric, feeling this pleasurable sense of well-being. That's what euphoria means, a pleasuring sense of well-being. And so everyone's like, okay, being high, like that makes sense, this euphoric feeling. Okay, I can do that. And then, so from there, then we'll bring it down to the next, and that's enhanced senses. So cannabis enhances all of your senses whenever you are consuming. It heightens your sense of feel, your listening, your aromas, your visuals, your taste. It enhances all of that. And it makes it more visceral. Some people say, whenever they listen to music while they're high, it actually feels like they're closer to the source of the origin of the music. And so you can, for different people, that might be different types of sensations, but you can, many of you may agree that it gives you these enhanced senses. And then I'll take it down to being high versus being stoned. Some people typically just say high or stoned. They don't interchange the words so often. And people who don't use cannabis just use the word stoned all the time. And it actually really, really bothers me when I hear that, because to me, being high is giving you this, let's say, right proportion of THC and terpenes to your body that really allows you to feel more connected to the world around you. And our definition of connection may be different for us all, but it doesn't matter what I say, it matters for what's true for you within that. So that to me is being high, is that more proper proportion ratio. Being stoned is going beyond that, where you're actually very disconnected from the senses in the world around you, which I'm not necessarily putting one is better than the other. It depends what's calling to you. People are like, you probably don't ever like get stoned and watch movies or something like that. And I just don't really watch TV anymore. But to me, this life can be intense sometimes. So the ability to disconnect from it isn't a bad thing, in my opinion, but it's being mindful that you are disconnecting from the world, right? It's like, I'm going to get so stoned tonight, and I'm going to put on some movies, and I'm just going to relax. It's more of understanding that that's where you're going to go instead of just mindlessly doing that every night. But that kind of gets into, we're going to have Q&A in just a second, so I invite you to hold that. Is that okay? Cool, thank you. So there's a real difference between high versus stoned. And then sedative, balanced, energized. So then that's where we're kind of getting with the terpene profiles, right? You can almost picture a scale. Like way over here, you have the most sedative that you could be, and then way over here, you have the most energized you could be. And there's different levels all throughout that. I've actually been thinking about creating a scale around this. But so then you could be like, okay, I'm feeling euphoric, my senses are enhanced, I'm high, and then I'm in a very energized state, right? So what we're doing is layering the feeling that cannabis can actually give you. And then beyond the sedative, balanced, energized, you can actually associate that to your music. You can associate that to whatever it is that you like to do in life, and understand how that might want to get you there. Whether it is connecting with nature, whether it is, going to play basketball, whether it is writing, whether it is doing your work. You can hone in on these exact feelings that work for you, and then apply that into what it is that you might want to do in life. To really be able to, again, enhance your experiences and not take away your experiences. So, this is going to relate to the amazing question that our friend had over here, or the comment, I should say. Whenever we speak about terpenes and the way that we've been speaking to, there's a general rule of thumb that, okay, limonene makes me feel energized, right? So this is kind of what I like to refer to as like a central reference point of how that particular terpene is going to make you feel. But we all have a different body, mind, and soul makeup in this room. And thank God that we do, because it makes this world so much more unique and so much more joyful for that individuality. And individuality should be celebrated in so many different ways. So you all may know someone who loves coffee. When I drink a cup of coffee, it like gets me going. I'm like ready for the day. But I know people who drink coffee and it actually tires them out, and it actually kind of locks them up and freezes them up a little bit, because that's how it makes their unique profile, their unique archetype, if you will, feel. And so as you explore all of this for yourself, what the invitation is, you'll have these kind of general understandings how cannabis will make you feel, but understand your relationship to that, and you have to track it. So in a sense, you have to understand your own body, you have to understand your own mind and your own soul that's going to allow you to take advantage of cannabis in this sort of way. So again, this is a central point of reference, but we all may have a different relationship to that, right? Let's do a little check on time again. All right, thank you. That's a great number. Okay, so that's why when we started this is Kashom. So now, when people used to call us cannabis sommeliers, you can see the work that we are doing is way beyond terroir. It's way beyond different types of tasting profiles. It's way beyond hospitality. There is so many things that you can do when you're high to really enhance your experiences. And that's what I do with my work. And I do this through the platform of food. But honestly, you could take my skills and apply it to a lot of different types of professions. Life coaching, yoga teachers, right? Even entrepreneurials. You could do it into artists. You could do it in a lot of different ways, but I choose to use it through the platform of food, and which I love. But you can see, as we've been speaking today, that this really goes beyond being a cannabis sommelier. It goes beyond the terroir. It goes beyond a lot of the things that we've discussed today, and it can be used to really enhance experiences in your life, unlock potential in your life, up level, if you will. You can use all of this. And part of it, too, is when to not use cannabis, because it shouldn't always be used, right? It should be a tool that we can use to enhance these certain aspects of life. So I'm going to skip that. And we're going to come to some Q&A right now. And so if anyone has a question, I think you're supposed to go to the microphone so it gets picked up on camera, but I'm just preparing. Okay, sure.
I'm just going to finish what I was saying before is some
Great.
countries, when you were talking about the difference
Oh, hold on. Is that mic on?
Oh. It's okay. I think
you guys can hear it?
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to comment before, and then I do have a question. The comment was, when you were talking about stoned and high, some countries actually use stoned for drunk, but you've never heard high used for drunk. So there's a difference, because stoned is more like out of it, where high is more in touch.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I'm sure you're going to have information about your dinners later, so that's my question. I'm a certified gazier.
Okay,
So
great.
that's a sommelier of cannabis. And
yeah.
I've learned all about terpenes, but I live in a state that's illegal.
Yeah.
I live in South Carolina, so
Okay.
I'm hoping you give us information about how to attend your dinners.
Awesome, awesome. Well, yes, absolutely. And for that question, real quick, you can go to on Instagram at Philip_Wolf_, and you can find links to all of my other companies, so the dinners and stuff like that. You can find everything's accessed through there in a link tree.
Quick question. There are a lot of people who enjoy cannabis but don't smoke it, right? Just because they don't like smoking,
Yeah.
health implications. Are there other delivery methods that you've considered so that they can also participate in these dinners?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, kind of the natural is the vaporizer, right? And I think with vaporizers, I like vaporizers that you can use whole flower in, so like Pax is a great example. But it's still, my preference is different than other preferences, and so wanting to be inclusive, we do have those options for people, but definitely for what I do in my work with pairings, it's all through smoking. We'll do some stuff with edibles, and some of our bigger dinners, we might do some infusions and some courses that are actually paired to have more of, let's just say a bigger experience, if you will. So, but really, kind of the smoking delivery for what I do is kind of that way. I would always kind of invite the person who doesn't like to smoke to understand that you can take one little hit and be so good in this. So is the non-smoking because you actually have like a lung type of ailment that doesn't allow it, or is it just like a preference thing? And if it is a preference thing, I'll still put the invitation there to, partake.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Hey, my question is about just the
form of smoking? I know you showed a picture
Sure.
where they were using a bowl. I was kind of wondering, what are the preferred methods in this format that you would have people smoke? Is there any forms of smoking that like you would stick away from? Something that would come to mind is like maybe different forms of wraps or something like that.
Yeah. That's a great question. So I always like a bowl and a lighter for a number of reasons. It allows for you to do you could do one hit, dump it out, and load something fresh, right? So you're getting fresh greenery, you're getting the fresh fruit for every single hit that you're going through, and so to me that's very important. You can use joints and stuff, but once you get a couple hits into a joint, there's resin that is being created in that joint, and so now the smoke is passing through that resin, disrupting the taste. Another reason for a pipe and lighter is it's, as we started this off, it's tapping into the soccer mom. So it's very it's not intimidating when someone sits down to a pipe and a lighter than if there's like a blunt sitting there, right? They're like, oh my God, where are we going? So those are my reasonings. But for all of you who want to work without something and without a pipe and a lighter, come up with a reason why that works for what your kind of direction is with all of this, right? And I invite you to do that. But that's why I typically work with pipe and lighter. And it's also really dope when you sit down at your table setting and there's a pipe, there's a lighter. There's a couple people who've been at my cannabis dinners here in the crowd today, and you have your little tray of cannabis, and it's pretty fun. Thank you. You're welcome.
Great talk. Can
Thank
you
you.
walk us through how you put the courses together? Like an example kind of, I guess, course, if you will, Andre, like just...
Yeah,
cool.
so that's a great question. So what I will do is I work with local cultivators or dispensaries, and what I will do is figure out what is the freshest type of flower that they have harvested, right? We want to work with something that's fresh. And then I will take I will break down the terpene profile of that strain, and then I'll pass it over to the chef, and then the chef will create the meal around that, right? Every once in a while, there's an already created menu, and I actually have to go find the strains that actually harmonize with that, right? So there's kind of like two pathways there, but it's a lot easier if you can break it down and pass it to the chef. And then the other part, which can be fun, is where do you want to take people on the adventure, right? How do you want them to be feeling when you start a dinner, and how do you want them feeling when you end a dinner? Because we're messing with different types of feelings, and you have to understand, like, if you're working with a couple different cultivators with completely different terpene profiles, then everything just eventually starts blending together. But there are things to think about, like how you want them kind of journeying, if you will. So based on those terpenes. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Hey.
Hi.
So, not to be that person or anything, but
Oh, no worries. Yeah, everything's invited here.
I had a hydroponics business in California, and I meant for people to grow vegetables, and then they just ended up growing different strains of weed. And I was like, okay, I guess this is where this is going. But, I had different feelings about that, and especially being from Texas and then moving to California and moving back. So now with Austin, already now, you can get a license to sell CBD for like $300. And I really do feel that Texas is on the verge of legalizing marijuana. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see where you see this going, especially as somebody who, to be frank, is really good at growing different strains of cannabis. Yes. And they have different effects and different this, different that, and on different types of people. Sure. I would hate to see it turn out or be profiled similar to tobacco, because it really is, I believe, on a fundamental level, very different than tobacco. Sure. And different than alcohol even. And I feel a lot of times it's in the smoke store, it's kind of associated oh, you're smoking, kind of like cigarettes. Yeah. So do you feel where is this going? Is it going towards the food connoisseur thing, mm-hmm. the mental health thing, mm-hmm. The helping kids with seizures thing?
Sure.
Where do you see this industry going?
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And you're talking about more broad scale opposed to just Texas itself, correct?
You can take it either way, either
Okay.
for Texas, because that's where we are, or abroad.
I got three questions, kind of three layers here. Let me see what our time is. All right, we got a couple more. And so the tobacco point is really good, and I'm happy you brought that up. So tobacco, and I call it the tobacco lesson, tobacco is actually a very sacred plant and actually has a lot of benefits to use of it. But once the white man, my ancestors and people kind of took this and actually really bastardized the plant, and from that we got cancer, right? And disease from that, of taking that plant. And so our relationship with that plant became really bad. And so I don't want cannabis to become tobacco, and I call it the tobacco lesson because tobacco is actually a very beautiful plant, but we have this negative connotation to it, right? The second thing is we'll get into Texas, state of Texas. You know, I'm from Texas. I live in Colorado now, but I was born in Houston. My mom died in Abilene, Texas, and she used to call me all the time saying, hey, when are we going to legalize cannabis in Texas? Because she wanted to open a dispensary and have her rocking chairs out on the front porch so people could come shop and then sit in their rocking chairs and conversate. And so when Texas does legalize, I'm going to start Becky's dispensary in Abilene, Texas with a wraparound porch and rocking chairs on it, and I cannot wait until that day happens. And yeah, love you, Mama. And through that, you know, Texas has had a lot of big conversations around hemp. So there's really big programs going on with like Texas A&M and stuff like that. No offense to our Longhorn lovers out here, but Texas A&M Agriculture School, they're doing a lot of, and Texas has said that they want to actually be the producers of the highest quality hemp in the United States. So Texas has kind of said that they want to be the best at that. And hopefully they get that going because whenever they do legalize here, that will transition well. Unfortunately, there's the industrial prison complex in the state of Texas, which is one of the biggest in the entire world. You know, we have more prisoners locked up in the United States than anywhere else. Texas has more prisoners locked up than any other state. There's a lot of money in the industrial prison complex, and that's actually your biggest deterrent against legalizing cannabis in the state of Texas is the industrial prison complex. So honestly, if you want to help legalize cannabis, you know, go on the social justice route and challenge it that way because that's really big. When I was at the meeting of the United Nations, a dear mentor of mine who was speaking was like, what's the reason? What's the reason that we want to legalize? Is it for mental health? Is it for healthcare? Is it for financial freedom? Is it for these different things? And that's why a lot of people think that the United States has not legalized because what is our reason for legalizing? Is it an economic thing? Is it a social justice thing? Is it a mental wellness thing, right? And it's a plant that benefits people, and that should be good enough, but, you know, politics, right? And then on the final iteration of that, and then we'll have one more question here, is where is this going? So to me, I think the closest relationship is somewhere between tea and coffee. And when you get a box of tea, you can see chamomile, and you know how that's going to make you feel, right? You can see, you can see lemon zest, and you're going to know how that makes you feel. You can see these like combinations of echinacea and spearmint, right? And you're going to have an idea of how that's going to make you feel, right? You have some general idea, and then you can kind of read the box. So as I see packaging for cannabis, it almost be like limonene linalool, you know, and then within the coffee reference, 18% THC, right? Where you can look at and you kind of know through packaging like what 100 milligrams of caffeine is going to do to you, right? Or we're starting to learn that, right? As like these cold beverages that we can buy in the grocery store. So I see cannabis more like that, and then all of a sudden, people are just understanding how they can use that particular blend, right? That terpene profile whenever they purchase cannabis. So that's ultimately where I hope it goes, is in that sort of way, in which we can use for mental health, we can use for lifestyle, we can use for many, many different things. So, wonderful question. Thank you so much. And I can tell you're an advocate at heart, so thank you for all you do.
So, I'm coming from a place of love and respect here.
Yeah, please.
Just education.
Yeah, everything's welcome.
You know, I've suffered from like rheumatoid arthritis my entire life. Seems like it's been like 18 years. Yeah. And you know, traditional, you know, pharmaceuticals were never great.
Yeah.
So, you know, I never was experimented with anything in my childhood, so I was scared to try cannabis.
Yep.
And much later I did, and I found that it was remarkable.
Okay.
It helped me in a great way.
Yep.
But what is tragic about it is over time, I don't know what shifted, but you know, the pain relief is it's still there, but it does like a psychological Jedi mind trick, and it like puts me in like the worst like mental space.
Sure.
So like when I was seeing about kind of the feelings that you had
Yep.
listed, you know, the high.
Yeah, and you had the thumb down.
I've never known what I guess the high felt, because it always was like the stoned, but it was like a very depressing stoned.
Okay.
And it saddens me, because I would
Yeah.
like to kind of
So,
have what I have.
and because we do have to wrap up now, so what I'm kind of hearing is that, you know, it used to make you feel in this positive state, and now it's kind of making you feel in this negative state, and maybe I can provide some information about that. Is that helpful?
Yeah,
and
I want to know what I could be doing differently. Or,
yeah, and God bless your ailments too, and I appreciate you sharing that. It's a little vulnerable, so I appreciate that. Thank you. So cannabis, our relationship changes with cannabis as our body and as we grow older. Like because I've been understanding how terpenes make me feel for a long time, so I've understood like the terpene profiles I used to consume years ago don't serve me now, and I have to consume different types of profiles and I use cannabis in a different way. And if we have proper relationship with anything in life, it shouldn't always be full on like I'm gonna drink coffee, 2 cups of coffee for the rest of my life. You know, it's to be like, oh, I should take breaks from this. And okay, maybe I'm just having a cup twice a week, you know, like we should really challenge ourselves to not use things all the time and use them in a relationship that you understand that's serving and it's not serving. And so breaks from things are a really, really good thing. Also the way of ingesting, you know, maybe trying edibles and going to edibles or something opposed to maybe smoking. You know, for the pain itself, definitely using topicals on that would be very helpful. And again, I kind of started this as I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to give you the best health advice from this, but I would just think of what's my relationship to this, and do I need to actually, you know, consume less or take a break for a while and come back to it and see if it's serving me or not. And that might not be what you want to hear ultimately, but that's what I would kind of advise is to take a break and come back to it.
Yeah, and honestly, like I haven't really consumed in that way for probably like 2 years.
Okay.
It was like I would like to get to the high enjoyment, the euphoria.
Yeah.
It never happens anymore.
Yeah. Well,
so I stay away from it.
So I'll kind of end it on this because he's going to come kick me off the stage in a second. I saw him do this earlier. He's like barges in.
Sorry.
I like that guy though. So, all right. So setting is a big thing as well. You know, what are the conditions that you're smoking in, right? Like, where's your mind at when you start consuming? Like, what's your mindset? I don't want to like pull out where your mindset is, but you have to check in with that. And then what's the setting that you're consuming in, right? Are you actually creating a space for yourself to have an enjoyable time? If you do want to do writing, or if you do want to do something, set out a space for writing right away so you can take a hit or two and then go right into that activity. You know, I think that's the best form, is to set a space where you can go right into the activity that you want to do and not smoke and then 20 minutes later start hiking. So, setting is kind of a general thing I would invite you to maybe explore as well. But yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Thank you.
Thanks again for sharing. All right, I'll answer some more talks outside if anyone wants it. Right here's a QR code. So if you want to learn how you can optimize your life through cannabis, then you can take a picture of this. There's an application that will take you about 30 seconds to fill out. And we can send you these offerings that we're going to be coming out with later on this month. If you want to learn how to optimize cannabis for your own life, or if you actually want to incorporate it into the profession that you already do and learn how to train people to kind of understand cannabis in the way that I do, the way I understand. And so you yourself can teach people how they can optimize people's lives through cannabis. So a wonderful crowd today. Thank you all so much for showing up and being here today. So I'm out here at South by Southwest. Hold on, is this sightline good? Okay, cool. I'm out here. I'm out here at South by Southwest doing a talk on the art of cannabis and food pairings, as well as producing some events. And ultimately, I really want to show people how you can use cannabis to optimize your life, to unlock certain potential. And you can do this in so many different ways, and not just coming from a place of the principle of pleasure, the pain management and sleep aid, but more so how you can optimize your life. So when I teach people about the art of cannabis and food pairings, we're really using food as the driver, if you will, to understanding cannabis on this sort of level.
And the events that you're producing, do you want to talk about those at some point here?
So I'm really excited that I'm going to produce the MAPS fundraiser for them. I wish I could dive more into that, but yeah, it's
How overall has your experience been, being able to connect with people here at
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's been incredible being here in Austin. I'm a Texas boy. I was born in Houston, and so being here in Austin just makes me feel so close to home. And to see, there's so many more people in the talk than I expected, which was a real pleasure. And also, the questions that people had were so good, and to see everyone's interest into the work that I'm doing, but also too, seeing it click in their minds of, oh, okay, yes, this is how we've seen cannabis for years, but now we're starting to understand these new layers, these new textures of this plant and how we could actually use it.
So you're a veteran in the cannabis space. You've been around, seen a lot, watched the progression. Does it surprise you or give you other emotions to see it so embedded in a mainstream conference like this?
Yeah, I'm really honored to see it as embedded in South by Southwest as it is this year. There's a lot of different panelists. I'm seeing a lot of good friends and colleagues out here educating people through these discussions. And it really is, to me, we've reached a point where it's a mainstay, right? I think cannabis is kind of been destigmatized enough where it could be present at any conference and people wouldn't, have an ugly eye to it, if you will. But where I want to see is what's the next level of cannabis, right? What's the next level of how this is, how this is woven into the tapestry of our society. And these discussions we're having at South by Southwest really helps that evolution of how we're going to be using this plant in the future. And it's important to create right relationship with cannabis and all these plants actually. And we're seeing the movement for that. And what's so inspiring for me is that there's really not people trying to bring it down. Everyone's trying to figure out how they can use it to lift up, how it can be used to lift up in our society, whether it's from a mental wellness standpoint, a social justice standpoint, an economical standpoint, a lifestyle standpoint, which I focus on. And these are all different ways or different pillars of life that can be affected by cannabis. And now we're starting to understand these new iterations of using this plant to affect these types of pillars for ultimately, and what I like to use is to level up.
So there's obviously a ton of decision makers here at South by, right? Not all of them familiar or experienced with cannabis. What would be like a really big picture positive outcome from the programming today moving forward?
Yeah, so I think for me, a positive outcome from all the programming that's happening around cannabis at South by Southwest would be around new curiosities and thoughts of what's next. What is going to open us up to understand where we can take this? And so that's really the future of cannabis and the future of these plants is what excites me. Sure, there's some people here who are educating people, kind of creating a base of understanding so they can maybe be confident to bring it into their own life. But there's also a lot of people who are putting out ideas into this conference of, what are the limitations or the lack of limitations? What are these edges that we can push with this plant? And that's what I really like to see is to come out of this of, being on the brink of the next iteration.
And one more, let's see. Oh, what's an exciting or awe-inspiring moment that you've had so far at South by?
Well, right before I got to go up on stage, I got to chat with Ricky Williams, who I know. I've met him a few times, and he was actually an idol of mine when I was young. I was actually born in Texas. I loved the University of Texas. He was the Heisman Trophy winner for the University of Texas, and obviously he's a huge cannabis advocate, and his life has been very polarized for his use of cannabis whenever he was expelled out of the NFL. And so I remember this in my late teens, early 20s of watching his career and questioning like, oh my God, why is he being so persecuted for his use of this plant? You know, it seems like he just wants to live his life the way that he wants to live it. And I think that should be, freedom of expression and freedom of what works for you is so important. And so when we were walking up to the talks, because he's actually giving a talk at the same time, Ricky and I got to dive in a little bit on Kashom, and I got to tell him, you know, the message behind Kashom and what my goals are and what my visions are. And he got to reflect his thoughts with me about that. And it was really uplifting to, you know, hear him being like, yeah, like that's what we got to do. That's the way, like that's how we need to guide these people. And so there's like a confirmation there for me from an idol of mine, which was very, very special. And that's one of the many things that have happened, you know. There's a lot of incredible teachers here, Paul Stamets, Rick Doblin, that I'll be able to speak about my work to, and who knows who else will be here, because South by Southwest is just getting started. Cool. Kashom is a body of work to teach people how they can optimize their life using cannabis. And this can optimize their life in unlimited ways, because to me there's unlimited potential on how cannabis can benefit someone, and that's based on their own body, mind, and soul makeup. And so you understand these certain principles of cannabis, you understand how to use cannabis in a certain way, and then you apply that to your own life, and you can all of a sudden use cannabis well beyond the principle of pleasure, sleep aid, and pain management. And that's what Kashom is going to do. Whether it educates consumers who want to optimize their own life, or different types of professions, which includes cannabis and food like I do, but there's many professions such as life coaching, such as being a chef, an event producer, a yoga teacher, that you could apply these knowledge that I have to and actually teach these skills to other people and allow them to understand how they can benefit their life with cannabis. Yeah. And then if you want to like get in on like the microdose business side, there's 450 million consumers in the There's 450 million consumers who use cannabis across the world, and there's not one consumer platform that teaches you how you can use cannabis to benefit your life. And so we have such a market opportunity with our body of work to really instill into a program that can educate people around the world, and we want to be that authoritative voice. We're done.